From a devastating attack at Carol Baskin's big cat rescue to a monstrous accident at the real-life Jurassic Park, here are 10 of the most savage zoo animal attacks ever. Number 10. Polar bear. Zoo attacks can be absolutely horrifying. Most animals at the zoo are locked inside of huge cages for a good reason. Lions, tigers, and bears are all very dangerous, obviously. But that doesn't stop attacks from happening, like when a woman in Berlin was mauled by a polar bear on a Friday afternoon after she climbed the fence and jumped into its habitat during feeding time. This was clearly a horrible decision, and according to CNN, the bear immediately attacked the woman upon her entering its enclosure. She had plunged into the bear's watery moat, and it decided to bite her several times. The zoo workers tried to help by throwing rescue rings into the enclosure and distracting the polar bear, and it did work, though not before she was severely injured. She ended up being treated at the local hospital after workers dragged her out of the bear's habitat. Chances are she won't be strolling into any more animal enclosures. The police said that even after being rescued, it was unclear why the woman decided to break into the polar bear habitat. It literally doesn't make any sense. And as for the polar bear, it didn't even get in any trouble. After all, the lady literally broke into its enclosure. If someone broke into your house, you'd probably attack them too. Number 9. Disaster at Big Cat Rescue. This next story is for everyone who watched the Tiger King documentary on Netflix. In December of 2020, a woman almost lost her arm when she was viciously attacked by a tiger at the Big Cat Rescue run by the infamous Carol Baskin, who may or may not have murdered her husband. This happened in Florida, when a volunteer just about had her arm literally ripped off at around 8 o'clock in the morning when she was trying to feed the animal. She had apparently been volunteering at Big Cat Rescue for 5 years and broke protocol when she reached her arm into the cage during feeding time. According to Big Cat Rescue, this is something that is against protocol. Nobody is supposed to stick any part of their body into a cage with a cat in it. The tiger's name was Kimba, and it grabbed her arm with such ferocity that it was nearly torn off at the shoulder. Unfortunately, the woman who made this grave error was almost 70 years old. Getting your arm ripped off at 70 is definitely not the best way to spend your remaining twilight years. The tiger has not been disciplined in any way, as it wasn't the tiger's fault. And after being taken to the hospital with serious injuries, the victim of the attack was able to make a recovery. As for Carol Baskin and her dead husband, she still has not been arrested. Number 8. Attack of the Tapir. Everyone expects the most dangerous zoo attacks to come from tigers and other big cats. But a recent incident at the Dublin Zoo involved an out-of-control tapir. A tapir is an animal kind of like a giant anteater mixed with a huge pig. It's a super weird creature and not usually aggressive. But that didn't stop one from mauling and seriously injuring a 2-year-old girl at the Dublin Zoo. This little child suffered injuries to her arm and stomach and was only saved when her mother got between herself and the enraged animal. At the time, the attack made headlines all over the world. The Zoological Society of Ireland ended up being charged with the crime of breaching health regulations and had to pay a moderate fine to local charities. Interestingly enough, the young girl's brothers ended up being paid a massive damage settlement for the nervous shock they experienced by watching their little sister be mauled by a savage animal. As for why the child was attacked by the oversized rat pig, it was probably started when the child made an excited screeching noise. The tapir is usually docile, but when it heard the girl screech, it got startled, picked the girl up in its mouth, and shook her violently. If not for the mother's intervention, the tapir very well could have shaken the child to death. Have you ever watched anyone get attacked by an animal? What happened? Tell me about your story in the comments section below. Then be sure to subscribe to American Eye for more amazing videos just like this one if you haven't already. Number 7. Black panther on the prowl. Animal attacks can happen anywhere in the world, in any zoo, anywhere. Even in the south of Japan, people are not safe from rampaging zoo animals. In yet another story from 2020, a female staff member suffered severe wounds to her head and to her arms when she was attacked by a black panther at a zoo in the city of Kagoshima. The woman had apparently been watching the panther during feeding time through a small gap in the steel fence. The curious panther jumped towards the fence, reached its path through the small gap, and the staff member was simply too stunned to move out of the way. The staff member was not killed, and she'll definitely heal from her wounds. But imagine if there hadn't been steel bars between her and the cat. She would have ended up like the guy who died in 2018 at the exact same zoo when he was mauled by a white tiger inside of its cage. This is the second incident in 2 years in which someone has been mauled by a large cat at the zoo in Kagoshima. It's doubtful they're doing anything wrong, but just a poor coincidence for them. According to the head of the zoological park, workers are encouraged not to get close to the fence. When they do get too close to the fence, accidents sometimes happen. Number 6. When dragons attack. If you didn't already know, prepare to have your mind blown. In Indonesia, there is currently a Jurassic Park theme park being constructed on Rinca Island. This is one of 3 islands in the area that holds the last great population of Komodo dragons. It's unclear at this time whether there will indeed be dinosaurs roaming around this Jurassic Park, but it's definitely the closest thing to Steven Spielberg's fictional version ever to be built on Earth. It's a resort that will cost Indonesia around $5 million to build, and it's already had a dinosaur-related accident. It all happened when one of the workers was attacked by a giant Komodo dragon. The colossal lizard apparently tore off several pieces of the worker's body before he was saved. According to the Daily Mail, the injured worker was quickly taken away by boat and was in questionable condition. He'll likely survive, albeit with a few pieces missing. But as for the Komodo dragons, it's a different story. Indonesia's Jurassic Park is highly controversial because the Komodo dragons are considered very close to extinction. Many scientists figure that with global climate change, Komodo dragons will be pushed into extinction by the year 2050. Now that Indonesia is cutting apart one of the animal's very last habitats to create a dinosaur park, they probably don't have much longer to live. Some conservationists have deemed the idea of the park an embarrassment to the country. Number 5. Mauled by a bear. Visitors at the Shanghai Zoo got a whole lot more than they paid for when they witnessed a zoo worker be killed in the wild beast area of the Shanghai Wildlife Park on a Saturday afternoon by an angry bear. The Shanghai Wildlife Park said in a statement that they were extremely distressed that such a tragedy had occurred. They also apologized for any inconvenience caused to the tourists. The wild beast area was closed after the attack, but not before the video of the incident circled across the globe. The area of the park where the incident went down is only accessible by a bus. Animals roam freely, and visitors can only go by and look at them through the windows of the tourist bus. On this particular Saturday, the people on the bus got to look through the windows and see the worker being ripped apart by the bear. It happened right in front of the tourist bus. What makes this story even wilder is that it happened right after a similar incident in 2017, in which a man was bitten by a different bear in yet another drive-through wildlife zoo in China. It happened when he ignored the warnings and decided to roll down his window and feed the bear by hand. As you can imagine, it didn't turn out very well for that guy, just like it didn't turn out well for the worker wandering through the bear enclosure. Number 4. Angry gorilla. Gorillas are notorious for attacking people in zoos. It happens all the time, and was even the cause of death for poor Harambe. But one of the most recent gorilla attacks happened in Madrid, just recently in 2020. The zookeeper who was on the wrong side of the gorilla attack ended up with 2 broken arms, a severe head injury, and probably a bit of PTSD. The woman had been performing routine tasks early in the morning inside the animal's enclosure when she found herself standing directly in front of the Madrid Zoo's star gorilla. The gorilla's name is Malabo, and he was almost 30 years old at the time of the attack. He was also supposed to be hidden behind a triple-door security system. It's unclear how exactly the animal got out of its sealed enclosure. It could have been a human error or a technical error. Nobody is really sure. But in any case, the zoo team did manage to put down the gorilla with a tranquilizer dart before it could do any additional damage to the unfortunate worker. It was then taken inside of its enclosure and calmed down. What's really interesting is that the zookeeper who had worked for 19 years at the zoo wasn't even being attacked by the gorilla. He simply picked her up and gave her a bit of a shake, but because he's so strong, it broke both her arms. He was only startled and was trying to figure out what was going on. If the gorilla had really wanted to hurt the woman, he would have ripped her arms off instead of just breaking them. Number 3. King of the Zoo. Everyone knows that the lion is the king of the jungle, but the lion still reigns supreme no matter where he goes, even when transported to an Australian zoo. Perhaps no example is better to showcase the supremacy of the lion quite like a recent incident at the Shoalhaven Zoo near Sydney, when 2 lions attacked a zookeeper for unknown reasons and critically injured her. The woman was left with severe injuries to her face and throat. She'd been trying to clean the enclosure when the lion set upon her. According to the report from the BBC, Paramedics found the woman unconscious in the enclosure, bleeding from all around her face and neck. The lions had been restrained after the incident, but it was still a bit of a daunting task for the paramedics, who literally had to walk straight into a lion's den. The victim was flown to the Sydney hospital in critical condition and will hopefully make a full recovery. Number 2. Tiger escape. In December of 2007, Christmas Day to be exact, a large Siberian tiger named Tatiana escaped her habitat at the San Francisco Zoo. This is probably the worst animal you want escaping from your zoo. It was probably already mad from being stuck in a cage to begin with, and once free, it undoubtedly wanted to exact some revenge. And that's exactly what Tatiana did. She stalked and attacked 3 teenagers who were visiting the zoo on Christmas Day. 2 of the boys were brothers, and they managed to survive after being seriously wounded. But their friend, a boy only 17 years old, died from the injuries given to him by the escaped tiger. The brothers ended up settling with the zoo for just shy of $1 million. That's a big payday, but still not any kind of compensation for a human life. To this day, it's unclear how exactly the tiger got out of its enclosure. Tatiana was supposed to be separated from the public by a large moat and tall walls, but she must have leapt over the barrier. This isn't altogether surprising. Her moat was a little under 13 feet, 4 meters, 4 feet lower than the standard wall should be for a tiger. In comparison, the lion habitat at the Singapore Zoological Garden is 22 feet, 7 meters high, nearly double the tiger enclosure in San Francisco. This was a clear case of negligence on the part of the zoo, as they were obviously too lazy or too cheap to build a proper enclosure, and the result was that the tiger got loose and killed a young boy. Number 1. The other side of the fence. Not every zoo attack is a caged animal attacking a person. An absolutely shocking video has surfaced online of a man at a Polish zoo who jumped into a bear enclosure and attacked the bear inside. The man was apparently drunk when this happened, and he leapt into the enclosure and tried to drown the bear in front of terrified zoo visitors. This went down at the Warsaw Zoo, and the man can clearly be seen in the video footage trying to shove the bear's head underneath the water. But this is actually the most disgusting story on the list. It turned out that the bear was an elderly animal who had been rescued from a circus where she'd been abused and physically hurt before. She ended up not even fighting back against the guy and just kind of gave up. Luckily, he eventually stopped trying to drown the bear and walked away. The zoo is now taking all legal steps necessary to bring this individual to justice. How do you feel about going to the zoo after hearing these horrifying stories? Let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe and come back soon for more amazing videos like this on American Eye.